asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
This is very important stuff. I've covered this subject before in different ways with different people, but I'm glad to be joined today by our guest who set up and founded TITV, which is Targeted Individual Television. And he set up that channel last year so that targeted individuals here in the UK could record their testimonies and their experiences of targeting. Because I said tens of thousands of people around the world at the top of the programme, but it might be more than that. It might be. I mean, we don't know how many people have experienced this and who haven't spoken about it. We're talking about people who are convinced that they are being targeted by agencies, maybe governments, maybe other agencies using implanted chips and sophisticated weaponry, but not always chips and not always weaponry. Doing nuisance things, mischievous things, scary things, following people, entering people's homes. That's all a part of it, as well as the implantation and the sophisticated weaponry. Now, despite the massive numbers of people that are coming forward, and as I said, lots are, if you look for this online, you get a standard answer on the internet from psychiatrists, from psychologists, who say that those who claim they are suffering from it are delusional and they are in the grip of some form of psychosis. Now, I laid my cards on the table before. I don't believe that satisfies my curiosity about this phenomenon at all. I don't buy that it's all delusional and psychosis. My guest who founded TITV has his own very, very interesting story to tell. Let's welcome to the programme Shane Gibbs. Shane, welcome. How are you?
Good evening, Richie. How you doing, my friend?
I'm very well. Thanks for coming on. And that's an important distinction to make. And it was actually you put that in my mind earlier today. It is your distinction, really. When we talk about this, it isn't always sophisticated weaponry and implants. There are many ways that agencies can target and harass and oppress people. It's fair to say that.
You're talking about a very, very minor part of the complete picture of the program, Richie. There's so much more that goes on. You know, of course, there's implantation, there's electronic harassment and microwave weaponry being used. That's pretty obvious. But it's a very, very minor part, as I'm hoping that your viewers will probably understand by the time we get to the end of this interview.
Really good. Now, I asked you the other day, and I knew there was no issues anyway. You're a gentleman. I said, look, you're going to talk about allegations. Now, I don't know you from Adam, Shane. I've spoken to you and I like you, and I've spoken to some people who know you, and I'm absolutely satisfied that what you're about to tell us, I'm satisfied that you believe that to be absolutely true, and I'm interested in hearing it. But I asked you not to mention individual names or even individual places, only because even though I know that you've tried to bring certain people to justice for the things that you say have happened to you, that hasn't happened yet, and I wouldn't want to prejudice that by, you naming people here on this programme. So we won't do that. The story is not going to lose any of its impact by not naming these people. Tell us, go right back to the beginning. How did this first impact you? Go right back. I believe it was something to do with you being out at a nightclub.
I was out celebrating with friends in a local nightclub in my hometown, and it was actually Boxing Day evening. All having a jolly old time, and there's a gentleman, shall we call him? No, let's call him a gentleman. Let's be polite about the fella. Who was notoriously known for being a bit of the town drunk type scenario, always drunk up the town, etc., etc., etc. I actually knew him from a childhood. I started working on the markets when I was about 12, 13 year old, and his father used to own the largest fruit and veg stall in the marketplace in my hometown. So we knew of each other. And then there was an issue with a long-standing girlfriend of mine who he had always fancied, typical girlfriend, boyfriend sort of stuff, jealousy and all that sort of thing. And he sort of took it on himself to try and attack me in the nightclub. Probably sort of like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. It was quite late. The evening was like coming to an end. Luckily, I had my wits about me. I was actually driving, so I wasn't drinking. And I just, out of the corner of my eye, caught him coming towards the side of me, and it looked like he was going to hit me over the head with a bottle of beer or a bottle that he had in his hand. So I sort of like sidestepped. You know, I'm pretty savvy when it comes. I was born on a council estate. You know, you have to be streetwise. You learn how to look after yourself, etc., etc. So I just sort of like stepped away out of the blow, if you like, and literally just punched the guy once, and that was it. Left the nightclub, and the following day, I was actually driving down to the gym, I think, to go and have a workout. And all of a sudden, I was swinged by. There was about 4 police cars, a dog van. Oh, God only knows how many police officers who literally manhandled me and dragged me out of the car, handcuffed me, cautioned me, chucked me in a meat wagon, and run me down to the local Nick.
A very unusual response for something like this. I worked in nightclubs for years, not as a doorman, but as a DJ and as a barman. I could imagine if the other gentleman made a complaint, I could imagine a policeman knocking on your door of an afternoon or even after Christmas to say, Mr. Gibbs, there's been a complaint made against you, my friend. I need to take a statement from you. This is very unusual. They caught you outside into a van and off to the station.
Yeah, that's right. Straight away with I was just literally bemused by the whole incident. Just before we go on, it actually turned out, as I found out later on, that the gentleman that attacked me was also the son of a master high-profile Freemason in my hometown.
Right, you were able to determine that as a fact, right? That
after the fact, yeah. I actually spoke to Freemasons about this particular Freemason. And he's pretty well renowned for not allowing his family to be disrespected.
All right, okay. So that might explain then the initial heavy-handedness of the police if this Freemason guy made a complaint.
You know, I think it's pretty...
I'm not justifying it now, but it might explain it. I mean, this is terrible. There's an altercation in a nightclub. Nobody was hurt. It happens all the time in nightclubs. If somebody makes a complaint, fair enough. You follow it up. Mr. Gibbs, what happened, blah, blah, blah. But you're taken down to the station. What happens then?
Well, I was actually charged. I was charged with GBH and GBH with intent, and then I was bailed and released. I was then taken to trial at a Crown Court, a few towns outside of my hometown. The evidence that the club, luckily, the evidence that the club put out showed exactly what I said was the truthful fact of what happened.
Brilliant.
The judge actually I'll briefly go over it. The judge basically summed up the trial and said, well, I must warn this particular gentleman that not to use the judicial system in the UK for his own whatever retaliation, and best not to go around picking fights of people of my calibre, i.e. Mr. Gibbs's calibre. And then I was acquitted, a free man, and was released from all charges.
And I'd say you were relieved, because you never know when something like that happens. So thank God the nightclub had the CCTV footage. There were witnesses. No case to answer. Sorry about that, Mr. Gibbs. Off you go. Or so you thought.
Yeah, this is where the fun really began. So yeah, I was obviously coming up to the trial, you know, knowing that all of this story had been fabricated, and knowing that how almost the police, the local police, was working on behalf of this other gentleman, or his family, I should say. I was ready to go to prison. I was just, and you know, and then luckily the club sort of came out with this because there was a couple of doormen that stood up and was called to the case, and with the evidence from the CCTV and the comments from the doorman, it was just blatantly obvious that this guy had picked on somebody that was completely out of his league.
And you were entitled to defend yourself, hence throwing the punch as he came at you. Fair enough, happy days. So that should have been the end of it. you put it down to a bad experience and you say, well, so what? You know, the guy's an idiot. I won't bump into him again. I'll avoid him in the future. Take us on. What happened next?
Well, being so sort of like overwhelmed and actually quite surprised that I was actually a free man, I booked a week's holiday away with my cousin the following week. So I was away having a sort of like just trying to get over all of the stress and the mental anguish, if you like.
Shane, it sounds like it really bothered you. I mean, I don't want to sound like a fool here now, but I've not had the experience. It sounds like it was really it shook you up going to court and having that experience.
I think the word that you need to use would be sort of like trauma basis, traumatized. I mean, it was an unreal situation. It was uncalled for, and it was completely and utterly wrong. And Absolutely. I was just like, what the hell? Yeah, I mean, I had no idea. It was completely out of my hands. All I knew that I was facing a trial at a Crown Court where I could possibly have gone away to prison for a long time. You know, the charge they put me on, I think at that time it carried about a 15-year sentence.
He must have had an injury, did he? I mean, if he didn't, I mean, it doesn't matter anyway. You weren't guilty.
I chipped a couple of his teeth, and he had some bruising and a cut lip. You know, simple, nothing major. Just I punched him on the chin. I'm quite a stocky, muscly type fellow. Always have been. So
if you go running at people in nightclubs trying to hit them, you can't really go crying when they defend themselves. And right, so I just wanted to, I don't want to in any way diminish that. It's just because I haven't had the experience of being dragged into a court facing prison time. So I understand. I absolutely get now why it shook you up. So you went on holiday, happy days, couple of weeks in the sun, all is good, and you come back. What happened?
Came back in the early hours of a Saturday morning. Went up to my I owned a little flat at that time. It was actually the first property that I bought on through the Rights to Buy scheme. So yeah, that's about the only thing I can thank Margaret Thatcher for. And I tried to put my keys in the door, and the keys wouldn't fit in the door. And there was a piece of paper stuck on the door saying, "Please contact your local police station." So then I've contacted my mum, because she was the one who had the keys and all that sort of stuff while I was away. And I said, "Mum, what's going on?" So I can't get in the flat, and there's a notice from the police here. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, what on earth have I come back into? Do you know what I mean? I've just got rid of the police, and now I'm back in front of them again. Well, it turns out somebody had burgled my property while I was away on holiday. They had fitted new locks and failed to give the keys to my mother, even though she requested them, telling them that I was out of the country on holiday. So she told me this is like 4 o'clock in the morning. I just sort of like had a proper good holiday away with my cousin, really, really feeling it, to be honest with you. 4 o'clock in the morning, I find myself going down to the local police station with the note explaining the situation, to be told that the officer in charge of the case wouldn't actually be back on duty until 3 days later, till the Wednesday.
No way.
And I should come back up to the police station on the Wednesday to retrieve my new keys.
That's unbelievable. So obviously, this is in the small hours of the morning. Did you remain calm?
Basically, my response to that was, well, please be made aware now that if somebody calls you from the property, from the block of flats, to the noise of somebody kicking,
you're going to break in. You're going to break in. Yeah.
Don't worry about it, because it's me breaking into my own property, because you are not allowing me to take the keys to the property because it's been burgled.
What did he say?
He didn't say anything. Absolutely nothing. I mean, this is the crazy stuff about it. So I've gone back. I've kicked the door off, and effectively that was the end of that scenario.
What was taken, Shane? What was taken from the apartment?
Oh, it was ransacked, absolutely ransacked. They took every piece of jewellery. They took paintings. They took small antiques. They literally emptied the place of anything of any sort of like considerable value. Absolutely ransacked the place. The place was turned upside down when I got in there.
And at that time, did you assume that 'twas some scallywag who'd broken in when you were away?
I just thought it was bad luck. See, the thing is with this program, the thing is with this targeting, everything is tuned initially until you actually understand and realise what's going on. Everything is set up to look like, you bad luck after negative coincidence and coincidence after coincidence and bad luck after bad. It's continual, and that's the way it's supposed to look. And I just thought, well, it's bad luck, you know. It's one of them things. I've been burgled. Just a shame that I've had to get myself back involved with the police after I've just had what's gone on.
Right, can I ask you this then? Now we're about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. We can go to the end of the show, which is great. There are other aspects to this in terms of why they might do this to people, how they're doing it to people, and I want to get into those. So I don't want to rush you. It sounds like I'm saying, I know I'm going to rush you. I'm not going to do that either. But move it along and tell us how this escalated as far as you understand it. Because I suppose right then you thought, bad luck, out of the country, jewellery robbed. But I suppose these days you don't believe that it was bad luck, that you were on holidays and somebody broke in, because there was an escalation in this, and I want you to take us through that escalation.
I'll give you a brief overview to run through to get to the right.
And I don't want to diminish it, Shane. I don't want to diminish it because I've read it, and you've told me bits of it on the phone, and it's bloody serious. If you are right, that's if. I don't know that you are. I know you believe you are, and I know I know people have things to answer, right? So I know that much. But you know, this is serious, and I don't want to diminish that in any way by rushing you along. But about it. Go ahead, Shane.
Just quickly, what I will say is this document that I actually sent to you, and the document that I'm referring from here. I actually sent to Downing Street. Who then sent it. I actually got a response saying that they passed the case on to the Home Office. I then got a letter from the Home Office to tell me that they've then referred the case back to the Chief Constable of the police force involved in my victimisation. So it went full circle.
You've done it right all along. All along you followed the chain. You've done the right thing all along, which I was impressed with. It's one of the reasons I was happy to have you come on. So tell us how it escalated. You break back into your own place. You have to deal with that nonsense. You changed the locks. Right, yeah. What happened then? Talk us through it.
The following week, I was awoken by one of the neighbours, and she said she's knocked on the door. And she was quite concerned. She said, "Shane, I think there's something on your car." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I've gone down there. Someone had kindly put some kind of paint stripper, some kind of corrosive acid into like a squirty bottle, and had literally walked around the whole car, spraying pretty patterns with paint stripper all over the car.
What a pain in the arse that is.
Same again. Disgusting. I mean, I just didn't put two and two together. Move on to the next year. Various acts of vandalism to several cars, all reported to the police force concerned. 2000 expensive modified car stolen from a locked garage, also reported to the police force concerned. I purchased another car and started my own business in 2001. Moved to a new property, got married, got divorced, stayed in the property. She got paid off, etc., etc. As soon as I moved in, I was always having trouble with one of the neighbours, one in particular, not keeping his property clear, chucking rubbish over the fence, and all of his fences all messed up, guttering leaks, and so it was leaking down into my property on the front and rear gardens. And it was just constant, and it was just so, and I just could never really understand what the problem was. But so that just same again, bad neighbour. I just put it down to, all right, well, it's just I'm unlucky. I've moved into next door to some dickhead who just obviously doesn't give a hoot about his neighbours. And so that carried on from 2003, 2004. The problems with the neighbours carried on. 2006, I had my car stolen from Maidstone, very expensive Audi sports car stolen from Maidstone. Again, reported to the police. 2007, bought myself a dog, as you do. Got divorced. And I was thinking, what, I can't be doing with women anymore. So I'm going to get myself a dog. I'm going to get myself a puppy. Right. So I got myself a puppy, and then from 2007, there was no further interactions from myself with Kent Police, but there was still the odd every now and then. I'd go around the shop to buy a pint of milk, and then I'd come out, or someone would come in the shop saying, "Oh, somebody just rammed into a certain car in the car park, namely my car," and that happened sort of like 4 or 5 times in a matter of a couple of years, and it was like, "Geez, I am having some seriously bad luck here," but still, again, didn't really put it down to any, I didn't class myself as a targeted person.
Even at that stage, let me jump in there because I've seen the timeline, and you say before 2007, before you moved next door to the nuisance neighbour, all of the things that happened to successive cars, that's a very obvious pattern there. And it would be obvious to any, relatively experienced detective that there's some very serious stalking. Maybe they wouldn't use words like that, but maybe they would use like, somebody's got a very serious grudge against Shane Gibbs, because here is a pattern of very serious things that have happened to him. It's not 1 or 2 or 3. It's over a dozen very serious incidents have happened to him.
I'll be brutally honest with you, Richie. I mean, it was so continual. It just became the norm. I know that sounds really weird, but it was just like, oh, what again?
And what did they? Because you're obviously saying to the police at the time, whoever's heading up the case, whoever's responsible, you are obviously, as a bright man as you are, you're saying, well, lads, come on, look, obviously somebody has it in for me here. I'm not coming down here crying every few weeks or every few months. You can see that something very serious is going on. Who has it in for me? That's a very serious crime, that. What would they say? What would they say to you? Or
nothing at all. It was from them. It was the minimalist type interaction on everything that I went up and reported. It was just so blatantly. It was like, oh, what are you again? Do you know what I mean? It was so. What'd you do? Who are you supposed to call?
But cars being destroyed, and vintage cars being taken from locked garages, cars being vandalised and banged into, and all of this. That's obviously somebody who, on face value, if you're a policeman or a policewoman, you say, right, somebody is out to make this guy's life a misery, and they're committing very serious crimes in order to imposition him. That's like major detective stuff. That we've got to find out who that is, who's doing this to him, but nothing. And then you mentioned then post 2007, you have a dog, and it gets a bit ugly, doesn't it?
Well, it gets a little bit ugly from something else that happened that was happening that I didn't put down to anything until now. Between 2007 and 2013, I built myself a very, very rewarding business. I'm a qualified chef, restaurant manager by trade. I came up with the idea to build a business around cost reduction within the hospitality industry, and I moved into account management. So I moved into the corporate world, if you like. And from 2007 to probably about 2012, my income was up to sort of like £70,000-80,000 a year. It was stupid.
You were doing really well.
Really, really well, And I was planning on what the next sort of like host house and the next car to buy and all that. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I started getting sort of like clients that I'd had for years, just literally cancelling by email or a voicemail or a phone call for no apparent reason whatsoever.
Lots of clients now. You're talking. Yeah, we talking.
At one point, I think the maximum my client database consisted of just under 500 clients, and I work on. I was paid my income through residual income, which obviously means that I do one piece of work, I manage the account, and I carry on getting paid for it as long as the account's open and trading. So it was very, very. I was on cloud 9, to be honest with you. So which made all this other, the trouble with the cars and all that sort of stuff. It was like, yeah, whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's just I'll go and buy myself a new one. Until then, all of the clients started cancelling, and it was just like, what on earth's going on? Do you know what I mean? It's taken me years to build this up, and it's literally falling apart.
And it wasn't business related, Shane, because everything was hunky dory. Your service was good. It wasn't business related. What sort of, when they were emailing you, what were they saying? Were they saying, we're going somewhere else, Shane? Or
saying they're going to start, because basically what I did, I was their sort of broker for all of their product suppliers, service providers. I was the negotiation man. I would negotiate special rates because basically what it was, I'll go to a supplier and say, look, I've got 400 restaurants and hotels, and this is just a hypothetical thing I'm going to tell you. And I've got 400 clients, and they all want to buy their chips and beans from you, and don't want to pay that price. It's got to be a cheaper price, and you've also got to pay me an income out of everything that goes through your accounts. So that is the basic form of the business that I run, and that was with service providers for absolutely anything and everything: waste disposal, food supplies, alcohol, people who emptied the bins, fire extinguisher contracts, sanitary bins in the female toilets, you name it. Because I built it as if I was the owner, So
right?
Yeah. So that makes sense. And it was a free service. There was no cost for the service, so it was a free service, and the client saved between 15 or 20% on their costs prior to me turning up and putting them onto my pricing structures. So it was a numbers game.
And out of the blue, they all start. Well, not all of them, but lots of them at the same time get in touch to say, even though this is a gift from God to them, this service, and it's beyond cost effective because it isn't costing them, they start getting in touch with you to say, thanks very much, Shane, but we're not going to do business with you anymore.
That's it. Yeah, we're selling the business, or we're moving to another supplier that you haven't got on your list, or it's just silly little excuses that just sort of. And again, I still didn't put it all together. But once we get to the end of this interview, hopefully all of this will make sense to everybody that's listening.
Let me do a quick recap. Right? Because people are joining the show all the time. Shane Gibbs is on the line. Shane founded TITV, Targeted Individual Television, last year, set up to give targeted individuals in the UK access to a channel where they could put their testimonies on the record and their experiences. And he's been telling us about his own very unusual story, which goes way back to 2000, Shane, doesn't it? It goes back to 2000, 2001. 1995, when a innocuous incident in a nightclub where somebody attacked Shane and Shane fended him off with a punch, went to court. He was charged with grievous bodily harm. It could have resulted in a long prison sentence. But the charges were pretty much thrown out because the nightclub came forward with evidence to prove that Shane was telling the truth. But the man whom attempted to attack him and whom was repelled by Shane, his father, Shane told us, was a very high-ranking Freemason in the area. And after that, things began to happen to Shane that go beyond coincidence. He talked about going away on holiday after he bought his apartment, his flat, came back, it had been ransacked, but the locks had been changed on his doors. The police hadn't given the keys to his mother. They didn't want to give him the keys for several days. He had to break into it. And after that, a series of things began happening. Stuff belonged to him being vandalised, cars being stolen. It's went on for a number of years. Very sinister stuff. Non-coincidental stuff. There's definitely a pattern here. We moved up to 2007, where things began to get very good for Shane in terms of his business. He opened and formed a brand new business in the hospitality industry, providing services for companies, and began to make a considerable amount of money and do really well for himself. Things seemed to be on the up and up, but in 2013, Shane was telling us strange things started to happen again with respect to multiple clients at the same time deciding to email him or contact him to tell him, look, we don't want to do business with you anymore. And you said that even then you still weren't thinking that this, was related to the stuff that went on in the 90s and in the early to mid 2000s. You just thought, shit, it's just unlucky. That's what you thought.
That's basically what I put it down to. It was I didn't identify the pattern, but I was just literally, I'm not the sort of person to let things get me down. So I just, every time I get knocked down, I dust myself off and I stand myself up and I carry on moving forward. That's the type of person that I've always been.
So what changed, Shane? What changed? What happened then that made you think, well, look, there's something very sinister happening here? Because that can't be easy to come to that conclusion. So take us on from what happened with
jump to 2013 now, and this is where it really, really starts getting really wacky and crazy, and some crazy stuff started happening. The business was failing, the income had gone down, so I decided to take in a lodger. I took in a lodger. I'll just briefly go over this. I won't go into too much detail. didn't have a car, so I had a couple of cars around me at that time, so I agreed to sell him a car, and he was going to pay for it on instalments. He ended up doing a runner, owing 3 months' rent, and taking the car without paying a penny.
Jesus.
Right, so and part of the agreement, of the written agreement, was that I will keep the logbook and I will keep a set of the keys and keep the car in my name until you finish paying for it. Luckily, and then he went off and run off owing all the rent and taking the vehicle with him at the same time.
He stole the car. He stole the car. Yeah.
It was my car. It hadn't been paid for.
Yeah.
So luckily he had mentioned where some family of his were living, and it was a small village just outside of my hometown. So I decided to go and do a bit of a recce one evening, and luckily for me, I found my shiny new car, all nice and clean and polished and stuff, sitting on this driveway, and I thought, So I sent him another text. Endless tried to contact him. He was completely blanking me. So I sent him a text saying, "Look, if you don't contact me today, then I'm literally going to take the car back." And then he did reply saying, "No, you don't know where I live, blah, 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 blah." So I went and somebody gave me a lift out to this little village. I walked went out to the car. It's my vehicle with the keys, opened the car, drove the car back home. Following morning, I had 8 to 10 police officers, banging on my door.
8 to 10? As many as that?
Yeah.
As many as that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there was hordes of them. There was that many. They literally, my front pathway was probably about 10 or 12 feet. There was that many of them. There was queuing outside the front of the front gate.
To arrest you? Presumably over the car.
To arrest me for theft of a motor vehicle.
So you would have said, "Well, lads, look, it's actually my vehicle. I had an arrangement with the guy. He didn't honour it. Look, I've still got the logbook. The ownership hasn't been changed to his name. It's my car."
Yeah.
So they said what?
So they arrested me, took me down to a police station that was sort of like 30 miles outside of my hometown, charged me with theft and bailed me. My solicitor got involved, and literally within a week I had a letter saying that all charges have been dropped and blah 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 blah, but your car has been impounded, and they kept the car. They would not allow me to take the car back for just under a year.
What?
Yeah.
On what basis? If the charges were dropped and obviously ownership of the car had been proven, how could they keep it?
This is the thing. The new girlfriend of my lodger had applied to DVLA to get the logbook put into her name.
Right.
So they said that there was no charges, and they was keeping the car until they can work out who was the legal owner. And
but that was obviously part of the fraud. You didn't have to be the smartest detective in the world to know that the guy, the ex-lodger, would pull a stunt like that in order to, protect himself against you taking the car back. It's very straightforward. And Jesus, and for a year.
And when they'd actually released the vehicle back to me, two of the back windows were open, so the car had actually filled up. The footwells were full of water, and it was mouldy, and it wouldn't start, and it was virtually worthless. I ended up chucking it down the auction.
Well, hang on a second now. Who has liability for the condition of a car if they took the car into their possession? And it was, whatever about this idiot lodger guy, at least he looked after the car. So when they took it, it was in good condition. Surely they've got some sort of liability for the condition of it in terms of it. If they leave windows open, well, they've got to account for that, surely. Or I'm obviously wrong.
They even took the paperwork and the spare set of keys from me when they came round, because obviously, the guy still had the other set of keys. So this is another little sticky one. So I had the spare keys, spare set of keys, and all the paperwork. When they arrested me and took me from my home, they took the keys because they needed the keys to drive the vehicle, right? Yeah.
So they're in possession of the car. They're responsible for the condition of the car.
They denied taking the keys and denied taking the paperwork.
So they lied about taking the keys and the paperwork.
Well, if they didn't take the keys, how could they drive it? They didn't take the keys.
Yeah.
And it was just
and you had to scrap the car. It was in such bad condition.
I ended up. It was when it was. He was supposed to pay just over £2,000 for it. And he didn't pay a penny. I ended up. I think I got about £600 at the auction for it.
Christ.
So yeah, quite a hit on that one, mate. Quite a hit on that one. And this Sorry.
No, I'm listening. So things began to accelerate then. I know this. I've seen the timeline.
After that shenanigans, this is where it really starts getting funny and really weird. And see, the thing is with this targeting program, it's the same structure whatever part of the world you may be in, whether you're in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in the UK, Canada, New Zealand, choose one. It is exactly the same process. It's a very structured and very step-by-step program. Does that make sense?
It does.
Right. So I've had all this come up. Everything I've told you up to now. I'm still not even looking at myself as being a targeted person, or I just knew that there was some kind of darkness, if you like, that just seemed to be. And the only thing I could put it down to was the court case, because that's the only nefarious thing that could possibly be the reasoning behind all of this crazy stuff that was going on.
Right, 13 minutes past here. I want to take a break. It's going to be 90 seconds long. When we come back, you're going to talk about what's happened in the last few years.
Yeah,
because it gets.
This is the real scary, disgusting, foul stuff that these people do.
It gets very sinister. Shane, thanks for staying with us. Stay with us. We'll be back in 90 seconds. Shane Gibbs is our guest. I've retweeted a link to TI Television, Targeted Individual Television, on YouTube. I've put a link out there. I will put another one out before the end of the programme. This is Monday's Richie Allen Show, Fab Radio 2, here in Manchester. Tune in radio as well, of course, richieallen.co.uk, triggerwarning.tv. Lots of places to hear the programme. More from Shane Gibbs in just a wee while.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structure and application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today.
Shane Gibbs is our guest. He founded TI Television, which is on YouTube, Targeted Individual Television. He's been telling us his pretty extraordinary, remarkable story of events that took place after 1995, when he was at a nightclub and he was assaulted. He was attacked by a man. He defended himself, punching the man once, put on trial for grievous bodily harm, faced jail time. Luckily enough, the truth came out very quickly. The nightclub staff were able to prove Shane's version of events. The judge moved very quickly to dismiss the case. But the man who took the case against Shane, the guy who attempted to assault him, Shane reckons it's not unconnected that his father was or is a very high-ranking member of the Freemasons. Now, a number of very unsettling things happened for many years after that. Burglaries, vandalism to cars being stolen, much more besides. We moved up to 2013 when a car that Shane had sold but had given to the man while a series to a former lodger while a series of installments were being paid, and he withheld the car's ownership details and logbook until the man paid for the car. But the man made off with the car, stole the car. Shane tracked him down, took repossession of the car. The police got involved. He was arrested for stealing a car. They kept this car for nearly a year, handed it back to him in a deplorable condition. Wasn't worth much, so he got a few $100 for it at auction. And up to this point, despite these bizarre coincidences over the period of those years. Shane was happy to think that he was maybe born, under a cloud or had walked on a crack or whatever. But then things begin to take a very, very sinister turn indeed. Shane, move it along. 17 and a half minutes past the hour. Get serious now. What happened then? You've moved past the car stuff. You've moved on. You've dealt with that. I'm sure you were still a bit pissed off, understandably, but what happened next?
Well, that's when everything really took a really, really nefarious turn, Richie. And basically, it all started with some. I lived in the street I lived in. It was mainly elderly people. I used to fix their garage roofs for them. I used to do their gardening for them. I used to carry stuff and fetch stuff and clean stuff and unblock their gutters. And so I was very, very well liked throughout the whole neighbourhood.
A good neighbour.
And good neighbour. They was elderly. I was a young fit man, and if they needed something doing and I had the time, then I went and done it. And then almost overnight, it was really, really bizarre. Everybody that I would sort of like meet on a daily basis literally started shunning me and trying not to interact with me, and it was really, really weird. And I'm just like, it's like, what's going on? Something really, really strange is going on. It was also about that time that some strange events started going on in the house, and somebody was going in my house when I wasn't there. And people, while I was out working, I used to come home and discover belongings and expensive stuff that I owned, destroyed, laptops taken apart, stereo systems all unscrewed with the speaker cones hanging out of the boxes.
In a locked house, Shane? In
a locked house with my dog in it.
Right. Park that just for 1 second. Go back to people shunning you.
Yeah.
Now, listening to you and speaking to you on the phone, you sound very level-headed. How do you notice? How do you begin to notice that your immediate neighbours and the people that you're very familiar with are kind of sending you to Coventry? How do you notice that? How does that manifest? What happens?
I'm a salesman, Richie.
Yeah.
And my business is salesman. My business is reading people, reading body language. I've done it for a living. So when there's something wrong. Well, for me, I knew that there was something wrong. I knew that something that was being said to them that they weren't talking about, or I don't know what it was. There was obviously some kind of slander campaign that had been put around the local community.
Right.
It was so obvious. And
so somebody or some bodies had put stuff out there about you that led people to start to give you a wide berth. Did you try to ascertain? Because I can only imagine how you felt. It must have been terrible. I'd have been trying to find out, listen, what's going on? Did somebody say something about me? At least tell me I can deal with it. Did you say that to people?
Well, I tried to carry on interacting with them, but I'm not the sort of person to force myself on somebody if they don't want to talk to me. So I just thought it was very, very bizarre, and just thought, maybe my time living up in this area is coming to an end, and maybe I should think about selling up and moving to another area. That was basically what I put it down to. Then like the real strange stuff started going on in the house. Like I said, I'd go out to work, I'd come back, there would be no sign of forced entry on the property whatsoever.
No sign of forced entry in a locked house?
No sign of forced entry, absolutely none. And the door, to start with, used to be locked, so I just unlocked it, as anyone would when they come home from work. The dog started acting really bizarre and being very, very clingy when I got home. I should have realised something was going on when he started doing that. I started coming home and finding my belongings destroyed, smashed, taken apart, just literally, speaker cones taken out of speaker boxes and laptops literally taken apart with the screws and everything left there for me to see when I got in.
Sinister stuff, and I know you have witnesses. I know you've had people look at this. Sinister stuff. So you go back to
I've still got all the pictorial evidence.
You've got all the pictures, yeah. So you go back to the police. I mean, Christ, this is dreadful stuff. Guys, there's obviously guys and girls. Let's not be sexist, Richie. You go down, you say, Mr. and Mrs. Policeman and Policewoman, there are people coming into my house. Indeed, what the hell is going on? What did they say?
Well, they actually ridiculed and laughed at me, mate. Literally laughed me out of the police station. When I was calling them to come round, they would come round and say, "Oh, there's nothing gone on here," and it was just the smirk on their face. They had the sort of smirk that you just, it just that slimy thing, and a lot of TIs can relate to this.
This is Hammer House of Horror stuff. This, and I'm not trying to make a joke out of this at all. This is Hammer House of Horror stuff. You get back to a house, no forced entry. You have to unlock the place to let yourself back in, and the place is trashed. And you call the police out, and they tell you basically to go and take a run and jump, and they kind of smirk at you and say, well, what can we do?
Yeah.
Wow.
Indeed. Well, it continued, and I continued reporting it. They then suggested that I get CCTV. I got several very expensive sets of CCTV, internal, external. I covered the whole bloody place, I had lights and cameras everywhere. As soon as the day after I had it all installed, went out to work, come home, and every one of the cameras had been smashed to pieces.
No way.
Inside and outside. So I then called the police again.
And were they working? I mean, how could somebody do that without being detected?
Well, how could they do that in the daytime in a neighbourhood where people are walking about, and it was a semi-detached house?
You took the words out of my mouth, Shane, because the next question obviously is, surely to Jesus, neighbours must have seen something.
Well, you tell me.
So you go knocking on doors. Hey, Michael. Hey, Jim. Hey, Sarah. What's going on? Have you seen anything? What? Nobody talks to you.
Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. Literally no interaction from them whatsoever. They would see me. They would put their head down, turn tail, and go back into the house.
How did you cope with that, Shane? That had driven me mad.
It was tough. It was just like when it started. All this stuff started happening. The destruction of all the property and the way that the police were behaving or misbehaving, as I should say, when I was reporting all of this stuff. It was just. They was making a mockery out of me. They was running amok with me.
So did you try and go above their heads, because there are procedures with respect to reporting misconduct by police officers? Did you go down that road? Because that's the first thing I would have done. I would have said to these people, right, I want your badge number. I'm going after you. Yeah,
well, later on, once let me just get through this little bit here, and then we'll go on to the next bit.
Go ahead.
So I carried on the harassment and all of the home invasions, and wheel tires being slashed on cars, wheel nuts being unloosened. So I'd go to drive down the road, and I think all of a sudden it felt like something was going to fall off the car, but there'd be like 3 wheel nuts missing out of the front wheel or the rear wheel. It was just endless, absolutely endless. I used to go. I also at that stage, everywhere I went, there was bad service. I'd go to the garage, and I'd always have to go back a dozen times to go and get something rectified. I started getting bad treatment with the private dentist. A private dentist. I spent thousands, and all they've done is just literally caused me problem after problem after problem. I used to go back with one tooth. I remember one tooth. I spent about £800 on a crown. I had to go back and have that looked at probably about 15 or 20 times.
Now, you know full well, because you're a smart man, you know that some of our listeners will think, yeah, I can see how, because of what happened years ago, maybe they saw an opportunity to use him as one of these, to make him a targeted individual for experimentation or whatever. I can possibly see that. But some listeners will say, I have no doubt, they will say, but Shane, how could they be so all kind of invasive? I can't even find the words to describe this, that they could enlist the help of car mechanics and dentists. I mean, why wouldn't they tell these people?
All I'm doing, Richie, I'm telling you the way it happened.
Yeah. I'm not disputing you. I'm just saying, that people will hear this and go, but if I'm a dentist and some guy comes in, and it could happen, and says, we want you to do this to Shane Gibbs or whatever, I'm going to tell him to fuck off, Shane. Excuse my language.
Most decent people would. So what on earth are these people? What are they being told? And it's a big question that you'll get from all TIs.
Yeah.
Every one of us. This is what I said earlier on in the interview. It's the program is structured exactly the same, whether it's in this country or in another country or in another part of the world. It's exactly the same. The slander camp, the bad luck.
That is true. Yeah.
Coincidence after coincidence. Interactions with negative interactions with police forces. Home invasions. My dog was beaten. For Christ's sake, Richie. I came home one day, my dog's face had been smashed with something that left one of his eyeballs nearly hanging out of his head.
Yeah, I saw the picture, yeah.
It's disgusting, and it's like a sick, it's like these people enjoy it. It's like a sick, twisted game that my life and my dog's life was on the line. They was looking, the ultimate goal of this program, the targeted individual program, is basically there's very, very few options. They will either try and get you to turn you insane. They will either try and push you to suicide, or they will get you to act out in public, cause yourself some big problems, and you'll end up in prison for a long time.
Why did they? This is the $64 million question. Why did they want to do that to people? If there is a they that is doing it, and I told you today, I'm sympathetic to you and to the other people I've met, Catherine Horton, PhD, and others. I have a lot of sympathy with what has happened to you. I certainly don't think you're mad. I certainly don't think, you're in the grip of some psychosis. I'm not qualified to say that, but I don't believe that you are. So why would they do that to people? What's the end game, Shane?
The question is, Richie, why would they want us to do it to potentially hundreds of thousands of people around the world? That's the ultimate question. Why?
Before we talk more about why, if I'm to think right now that everything you've said is true, like I said, I don't disbelieve you at all, but if I'm taking it absolutely, Shane is right, there is a sinister force behind this, I'd have to imagine that you winning that court case at that time back in 95, somebody said, let's use this guy. I mean, is that how you think it happened? Somebody went, all right, we don't like this guy, let's use this guy, let's put this guy in the programme.
I think they call it over in America. They call it. They think there's some kind of like terrorist watch list or hit list or something like that. So there's obviously some kind. Because since all of this stuff that I'm talking about now, is all in the past. And that's hence the reason now why. I'll get left alone. I don't get no bother. I haven't had no bother from the police since I've been here in nearly 3 years.
So it stopped, right? It stopped.
Actually stopped. Dead.
But at its worst, God love the pooch, God love him, he was beaten, the house was destroyed, turned inside out, people took wheel bolts. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's attempted murder, that.
Well, you're also talking about, there was a couple of really, really bizarre instances where I was rushed to hospital after consuming food out of my property from and they just said that maybe I'd had a reaction to it. Well, I was taken by ambulance on 2 occasions. One occasion, they kept me in there hooked up to all sorts of monitors. My whole body was convulsing and I was vomiting blood. They kicked me out of the fucking hospital.
Wow.
I couldn't even...
It must be said, by the way, I saw Shane on a film made by Vice, and I was very interested to see Shane's mum. Is your mum's a young woman, so presumably she's still around, Shane?
She's 70, mate.
Oh, yeah, she's a young woman, yeah. Well, thank God she is. Yeah, I know that film was made over a year or so. I only saw a little bit of it, and...
that was the whole reasoning why Kieran and myself actually formed TI Television, was to rectify the absolutely disastrous and disgusting portrayal of us in that documentary.
You're not going to like this now, but this is because I have one foot still in commercial and mainstream media. I can understand why you're pissed off with it. But what I saw of it, and even the bits where they interviewed the psychotherapist, I thought they did as best as they could to be objective, I thought. That's what I thought. I didn't think it was, an overt hatchet job. Now, I'm not in your situation, right?
All the information I've talked about in this interview, they was given all of this information.
And they left it out. Fair enough. Okay.
They was given the video of the patrol car trying to run me into the central reservation of...
Because we didn't talk about that, but you have footage of a UK police patrol car.
Well, that all stemmed from when all of the stalking and harassment out in the street. I was to get I'd go to the bank, and all of a sudden I'd put my cash card in, and then there'd be like 15 people literally hanging over my shoulder who could have pulled the money out for me. It was crazy. Really, really rude people everywhere you went, staring at you. Some people used to walk past and spit in front of you down, and it's just like, what on earth is going on here? Because I'm so thick-skinned. Because I'm, in my younger days, I've done a bit of door work and all that sort of stuff. So I'm very, very hard to get it to intimidate. Fear. What is it? It's just an emotion. It doesn't. Intimidation doesn't even come into the equation.
Well, I mean, it's wonderful that that you've been able to hold yourself together and not allow yourself to be intimidated like that. The reason I brought your mother up is because she came across well in the bits that I saw of her, and she seems like a typical mum. Hardy and smart, and you wouldn't pull the wool over her eyes. It looks to me like she's absolutely certain that this has been happening to you and that you've not...
As are all of my close friends and the rest of my family.
Yeah.
You know, because they have seen this all pan out over years and years. See, what I basically did is I started utilising Facebook as my bulletin board, and every incident that happened, it was like post it, videos of patrol cars, post it. When I put the video of the patrol car up onto my Facebook, within an hour, I had the chief inspector phone me on my mobile phone, apologising on behalf of his officers.
Oh, it's a shame you didn't. Well, of course you wouldn't be able to. Why would you be able to? It's a shame you didn't record that. But you did put the videos up of the police behaving badly. I mean, that's just definitive proof. Where can people see those videos today, by the way? Are they on the TI channel?
They're on TITV. Yeah, I think the video was in not the last program, the program about one. But I've also got we've got the TI television. We've got a website. We've got www.ti-television.com, all lowercase. There's forums on there. There's testimonies on there. It's we're still quite a young venture. We only started sort of like last August, September. We've got a helpline where TIs can phone a certain time.
Shane? Just while you're thinking of the number, write it down, because I'm going to actually do me a favour. Type it to me there, will you? While you're typing it to me, I just want to do a quick recap, point out a couple of things. Shane Gibbs is on the line at the moment. Shane set up TITV, as he's been talking about there, after his own experiences well over 20 years, dating back to 1995. Horrific stuff that he's described. To be fair to Shane, what's very interesting about Shane is that he has put forward and put out there on his channel a lot of very, very interesting and corroborating evidence that this stuff was happening to him for years. It got really, really, really scary and sinister in and around the year 2013 for a few years, and then it stopped. And you think, Shane, it stopped because you stood up to it and you started to use social media to basically, throw it back to these guys and put this information out there. Is that why it stopped?
To publicise? Well, no, it didn't. It didn't actually stop it continued. It literally, seriously continued. But I was basically, I was lost. Who'd you go to? When it seems like you've got a whole police force that have got no interest in looking in, and if anything, no interest. But it's actually the police that I used to be followed around by, like I said about the video, being run off the motorway, etc., etc., etc. Who are you supposed to call? Who are you supposed to call? The Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
And everybody says about TIs having mental problems, and the only problem that me personally and a lot of TIs have got, it's a governmental problem. It's not a mental problem. We're getting let down by our own governments, Richie. It's disgusting.
Well, it's amazing that this guy, chief superintendent or whomever, phones you up to say, listen, I'm very sorry about all of that. Presumably, and I know you did say to him, well, these guys have to be disciplined. There has to be a disciplinary process. They must be suspended pending an investigation into harassment and torture. It's mental torture of a UK citizen, somebody they're supposed to be protecting. And presumably his response was, well, we'll look into it, leave it with me. I suppose. I've just I'm putting the phone number out there now. So when he says to you, I'm sorry on behalf of my officers, the next step should be suspension, investigation, and then sack.
Disciplinary. Yeah. And these guys are supposed to be highly trained. They do specialist driving courses to actually be able and qualified to actually drive these vehicles. Now, so why did he? I think he actually put it down to an error of judgment.
Oh, that's madness, isn't it? An error of judgment.
That word's error of judgment.
And after that, then it stopped.
Well, no, not quite. It was at that point, I started getting a little bit more, right, okay, I need to catch these people that are coming in my house. So I then started buying all of these little spy recorders and audio recorders and little mini cameras and all that sort of stuff. And one night, as I set them up, and I was running there was digital recorders, so they was just continually record. One night I set them up. There was actually one just outside the bedroom that I slept in. I played it back the following morning, and I was horrified to I've actually got the recording. I've had it put through a special sound engineer who's done a full report, a full clean up on the audio recording. I actually captured people creeping around my house while I was asleep in bed, opening drawers, going through paperwork, just literally rummaging through. I mean, you can hear these people walking around me while I'm sort of like snorting and snoring in bed.
And you find out the following morning, huh?
And I absolutely shit myself. I won't lie to you.
Well, who wouldn't?
Well, at that point, it was just like, you know what, this is getting too real. So I had to be around other people. I mean, it was pretty obvious that what they was trying to do. I mean, they would have not batted an eyelid if my life had been taken. It seemed like they was looking to push me to either poison me or drive me insane, so I go and do myself in, or which is one of the main options that they look for from any targeted individual.
Or are they trying to push people sometimes into doing something? You know, rather than push somebody to kill themselves or act out, but maybe to do something, maybe big, maybe to murder somebody, or
maybe. Who knows? It happens. Richie, I've got probably 15, maybe 20 people sadly on my friends list on Facebook that have all suicided.
You knew 15 people that took their own lives
through their targeting.
And I just want to point out, and I'm not doing this to impugn Shane, I'm doing it for two reasons. One, in the interest of balance, and two, because, you know, it might disgust people to hear this. But despite the fact that there are tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of people around the world experiencing this, and by the way, this predates the internet, because some psychologists will have you believe that people like Shane and others, that because they speak to each other so much, they start taking on each other's symptoms, for want of a better word. But that's not true, because this predates Facebook and Twitter, when people in the furthest flung corners of the earth were writing about this and saying, as Shane pointed out, saying the exact same things. So, the psychiatrists want you to believe that this is corroboration through kind of subconscious, because you're all in the one place on Facebook and Twitter. But don't believe that. Don't believe it so easily. It isn't. I'm going to be fair here. It doesn't work as simply as that. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, they're very dismissive of it. If you put it into Wikipedia, for example, or Google, you'll get a very standard explanation. This is psychosis, and it's paranoia on a huge scale, and that's what they say. Shane, to your knowledge, is there any, let's call them system doctors, not independent people? Because I know a lot of independent people have been very good in supporting targeted individuals, but are there any system people who are actually starting to say, well, hang on a second now here, there's something more to this than just, they've all got some sort of shared psychosis? Is there any breakthroughs?
Not here in the UK.
Not in the UK, no.
Not in the UK. There's nothing at all. And just before I move on, when you mentioned the psychiatry, do you actually understand that how psychiatry is actually a weaponized form of attack?
Well, I'm not thrilled with psychiatry as a science. I had my own difficulties when I was a boy, and I went to a psychiatrist, and luckily for me, I was old enough in my mid-teens to tear up the prescription for the antipsychotic medication that they wanted to give me, because I had a bad experience being physically abused. I knew I didn't need to take antipsychotic medication. What I really needed to do was come to terms with the abuse and get over it and say, well, look, to hell with it, it didn't kill me. Move on. Either I killed the guy who did it, which you can't do because you go to jail. That's the catharsis, by the way. Or you just move on. So I didn't need antipsychotic medication. So I don't like psychiatrists. I'm sure there are nice psychiatrists. I don't like the science. I'm sure there are nice psychiatrists, well-meaning people, but the science I don't like. But you don't like it at all.
There's a certain element, and see what you've got to understand is, and this is where the link to Freemasonry comes in. I mean, you've got the police. There's a huge percentage of the police that are Freemasons. There's a huge percentage. I mean, who are Freemasons? Business owners, psychiatrists, doctors, accountants, etc., dentists, garage owners. Can you see the little links that I'm trying to put together here?
Yeah, I can.
So. That's what, and you'll probably get it from 80 or 90% of any TIs that you do speak to. They're gonna mention Freemasonry along the line somewhere.
So when you're saying that when people around the world, when they take this problem to psychiatrists, they're basically walking into a spider's web.
Because the program is so crazy, you know, can you imagine going to a doctor and telling them that you've been poisoned, your dog's been beaten, people are going in your house, and etc., etc. You're getting followed by police cars, and you're getting people spitting at your feet when you walk past them, and all your neighbours. It's designed to make you look delusional, Richie. The program is designed to make you. It's so disgusting and so foul that it's almost too foul to actually believe.
Do you think you'll always be up against that? Do you think that you're
in America and certain parts of the country, of the world, there are psychiatrists that are on the side of the targeted individual community. But slowly, the support is growing, but very, very slowly. Mainly in America, I must admit. In the UK, the only support that we have got that TIs have got here in the UK is TI television. There is nothing else. There is nowhere else. You know, you go onto Facebook, that you'll find hundreds of targeted individual related groups on Facebook. You will find thousands of targeted individuals talking and trying to, you know, it's just explaining what I've just basically explained to you. Some of what I've explained to you. Yeah. It's the same everywhere, Richie. It's no different. The program is very, very, and hopefully that's what's going to bring the program down, because it is so stereotypical from TI to TI. Or targeted. I don't like calling us targeted individuals. I like calling us survivors, because we have to survive. I mean, if sometimes, and for a lot of TIs, not so much for me now, but it's life and death. I mean, you're fighting for your life here.
Wasn't it very interesting last year when they introduced this subject to the massively successful television show Better Call Saul? I couldn't believe it. I was watching it with my partner Caroline. And the Saul, who was Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad, I don't know if you watched any of this, it might make any sense to you,
no.
Shane, but don't worry about it. It's not. I'm not going to in any way confuse you. It's a hugely successful television show called Breaking Bad, about a man who believes he's dying of cancer, who gets into making drugs, basically. Okay. Hugely successful, violent and exciting and thrilling. There's a spin-off called Better Call Saul, again, massively successful TV show. And in the show, Saul's brother, who is an important character, a very, very big character, he's a hugely successful lawyer, but he hasn't been able to practice for a year or so because he believes he's been targeted. And they introduced that. I've never seen it introduced to mainstream television or to mainstream drama. He believes he's been targeted and that Wi-Fi affects him, and you know that energy pulses are causing him serious problems and illness. But the show deals with it in such a way that the narrative is that the story develops that he's just imagining all of it. And I'm wondering, why did they introduce that? You know. Well,
I wonder where the story writer got it from.
Exactly. And when I brought it up last year, I thought the same thing. You know, where did they? It's quarter to the top of the hour. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left on this. We've covered an enormous amount. It's not happening to you today. Thank heavens for that. But people are reaching out to you all the time, and they're telling you what's happening to them.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to offer support for people that are going through the same thing. You know, and just before we finish, I mean, you mentioned about that guy talking about vibration. I mean, there's a very, very dark and sinister side of this targeting program that most people just would not understand, and that's a form of we call it electronic harassment, and it's a very real and a very, very painful sometimes, and very, very to start with, when you first start experiencing it, very, very confusing and very worrying, because you just don't know what the hell's. I mean, I had days where I'd be laying on bed and it feels like I've been electrocuted. You know, just literally the whole, like a current running through my body. It was just, I don't know what it is. I can't explain what it is. All I can tell you is what I felt. I mean, these are the symptoms. Yeah, it's crazy. Migraine headaches and, you know, tinnitus and volume type tones going up and down in your ears. You know, it's just, you know, I put a short video onto my YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to look at my YouTube channel, just look up Shane Gibbs targeted individual and you'll find me. You know, I actually took a short video about back in 2013 when I moved into my mum's house, and the room that I was sleeping in, I couldn't actually stay in there. I couldn't sleep in there because something was literally something was knocking me off my feet every time I went in the room. So I looked into it, and I bought myself a microwave oven engineer's radiation detector, that only went off and alarmed when I walked into that room. Now, you tell me what that is.
Yeah.
It's on video. It's on my YouTube channel. I don't know what it is, but I know that radiation detector was picking up huge, and it's a detector that microwave engineers use to see if they're leaking radiation.
And you and I could spend hours now talking about the rollout of the space fence 5G, which a lot of very learned folks and scientific folks are saying that the implications this has even for.
Do you know what, Richie? I am so worried. I'm worried for the young, the generations that are going to be brought up in this garbage. This what they're turning it into is just absolutely disgusting. Somebody is looking for complete and utter domination and control of this planet.
So could it be then that the electronic stuff that you spoke about, that I spoke to Catherine Horton about twice, I think, on the show, could it be that the people who have experienced that around the world in recent years and maybe in recent decades, that was all leading up to the rollout of 5G? Are we looking at guinea pigs? People are being used as guinea pigs.
Personally, this is what I believe. I believe that it's some kind of beta testing program prior to whatever they're thinking about doing. Anybody who's got any doubt about these things actually exist, all you've got to do is Google directed energy weapons, and you will find sheets and sheets and sheets and pages and pages
patents
of
as
this
well
stuff.
And patents, of course.
Absolutely, tons of it. There's a website you can go on. Because a lot of the attacks are like nausea attacks where they make you feel sick. There's a device, you can go onto a website called showmatech.com, and you can buy they class it as a neighbor revenge device. You can buy it for $69, and you can aim this device at one of your neighbors, and it will make them sick.
A neighbor revenge device?
Yes.
Who comes up with shit like that? Just before I give you the final word here, the targeted individual helpline is 078-437-12542. I'm going to say it again, and I've tweeted it out, and I'll get my mate who looks after the Facebook page, because I'm not on Facebook anymore. I don't have any access to it. Shane's the TI targeted individual phone helpline, TI television, 078-437-12542. If you're calling from outside the country, it's +44, drop the 0. 784.
It's manned by another member of TI Television. It's a guy called Tesh.
And it's Tesh. Tesh will answer. You won't get through to Shane. It'll be Tesh who's fielding those calls. Right, we have 40 seconds left max on this, Shane. Thanks for telling us that. It's fascinating, disturbing, worrying, I would imagine, for others who feel that this has happened or is happening to them.
The sad thing is, Richie, that this is real. This is, you can't make this stuff up. It's absolutely, and this is a life-destroying program that has taken many, many lives up to date. And somebody needs to start looking into it and start acknowledging and accepting that this is actually a reality. Because until that happens, nobody's going to get any. Where's it going to end? Where is it going to end? Until everybody's dead. Everybody's in a mental home.
And just to reiterate, you're not exaggerating when you say 15. You've been in contact and you've come to know 15 people that said enough is enough and God love them.
And they took their own life.
They killed themselves.
Yeah. That's how real this is. They just couldn't take the constant torture, the constant barrage, and it's generally TIs. See, a lot of TIs don't get the electronic harassment. They get a bit of stalking, they get a bit of home invasions, they get a bit of bad service and bits and pieces. There's so many different layers and different levels of TI. And then you get the ones that get the full shebang. They get all the microwave energy weapons, they get the possibly implantation, etc., etc., etc. And then when you're dealing with that 24 hours a day, mate, you want your life to end. Seriously, you want your life to end.
I can't imagine it. Give us the website address again, Shane, and then I'm going to take a break and I'm going to get out. Go ahead.
It's www.ti-television.com.
ti-television.com.
That's all lowercase. My YouTube account is Shane Gibbs Targeted Individual. You've got the helpline. You know, we've got a fly campaign. We've got nearly 40,000 flyers that have gone out over the UK about this. And it's just, I mean, what else can we do? I mean, nobody is listening to them. So many people that are all talking about and complaining and reporting, you know, to all over the country, not only this country but the whole globe.
Well, what's going to be very interesting is, because TI television is still very much in its infancy, and because the helpline hasn't been set up that long, it's going to be interesting to talk later in the year, you know, to see what sort of contacts you've received from people. I'll definitely be interested in that, Shane.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, I'll come back on and give you an update.
Let's do it. And in the meantime, thanks for candidly sharing your experiences with us. Again, we've tweeted the links out and the phone number out there. This is fascinating.
We have been quite limited with time today, you know, so I've just literally, you've had the glimpse of,
Shane, we've had an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah,
we can and we can talk again, but we've had a lot of time. You can't get this onto the BBC, and if you did, you'd be looking to get 3 minutes. An hour and 50 minutes is a lot of time, and you have to keep people's concentration spans into account as well. It's a lot of stuff for people to take in this.
Yeah,
you know, it really is. But mate, I'm really glad you came on. I'm glad I met you, and I look forward to
Thank you for inviting me.
Not at all.
It's a first for the UK. Targeted survivor community to actually have somebody with the balls like yourself to actually allow somebody like myself to come on and talk to you about the targeted individual program that is destroying lives. You know, people are killing themselves.
You're very kind to say that, mate, but no, the platform is there specifically for that, to talk about things that other people won't. We'll stay in touch, Shane. We're connected via phone and Skype. Thanks again for doing it, and I look forward to catching up with you later on in the year for updates on how it's all going there. Thanks again.
You're a good man, Richie. Thanks very much.
Not at all, mate. Bye for now. That was Shane Gibbs there, and I've given the number out, and I will give it out again now, and also the website TI Shane, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, mate.
That website is, give us that website again. TI
It's all lowercase, TI-television.com.
Brilliant, mate. Thanks for that. I nearly said it wrong. Cheers, Shane. Bye for now. TI-television.com. If you go to my Twitter page, you'll see the phone number. And like I said, I am going to put the phone number out on Facebook when I get my Facebook guy to do that. And he'll put a link as well to Shane's website. That's just about it for the show.